I never thought I'd be in a situation like this. Honestly, I thought I knew my wife, Emily, inside and out. We'd been together for 5 years and everything seemed perfect, or at least that's what I believed. She was always a little bitchy, yeah, but she had that fiery personality that I liked. She was confident, sharp, and knew what she wanted. We had our ups and downs, but I always felt secure, especially with the idea of our wedding just around the corner. It all started to feel strange about a month ago. She became more secretive, quick to hide her phone, always muttering something about work or friends when I'd ask what she was doing. She'd get defensive if I ever tried to check her messages, but I didn't push too hard because I figured maybe she was just stressed or overworked. Still, something was off. She'd come home late now and then, claiming it was just work drinks, but I'd catch her in little lies here and there. Nothing concrete, just enough to make me wonder if I was imagining things. What really got weird was how she suddenly started acting different around me. She'd be cold one day, then overly nice the next, almost like she was trying to cover something up. The worst part, I'd notice her phone always on lock, her messages deleted over and over, and her changing her schedule last minute without explanation. I tried to shake it off, telling myself I was overthinking because I was nervous about the wedding, about becoming a father soon. Yeah, she was pregnant now. I was excited, nervous, all the usual stuff. But this added tension was new, and I couldn't ignore that nagging feeling deep inside that something was wrong. Then I found the text messages. I was just messing around on her phone one night out of boredom and I saw it. A string of texts from her brother, Jake. They weren't innocent. There was a lot of talk about seeing each other, missing each other, and explicit stuff about sex. My stomach dropped. I couldn't believe what I was reading. Jake and Emily, that's impossible. I mean, I always thought they had a good sibling relationship, maybe a little too close sometimes, but this. I never expected her to cheat on me with my own brother. I stared at the screen for what felt like forever. My head was spinning, my heart pounding so loud I thought I'd pass out. How could she do this to me? Especially now when we were about to get married and start a family. I trusted her blindly. We made plans, talked about our future every day. And she was sneaking around with my brother. That betrayal hit me like a punch to the gut. I felt a mix of anger, sadness, and pure disappointment. How could she lie so effortlessly, so brazenly? She always acted so bitchy and confident, like she owned the world, but this was her worst lie. I didn't sleep that night. I kept rereading those messages, trying to find some explanation, some reason that could make sense of her cheating with Jake. But there was none, just straight-up betrayal. I felt crushed, betrayed by the one person I thought I could trust most. It wasn't just that she cheated, it was the fact that she did it with my own brother, right under my nose. And the worst part, I had no idea how long this had been going on. Had they been sneaking around since I was watching? Since I found out I was going to be a dad? The thought made me sick. I knew I had to confront her. I couldn't just sit here pretending everything was fine. But I had no idea how she'd react, if she'd even admit it. I was torn between rage, heartbreak, and a strange sense of numbness. I just needed her to face what she'd done. I needed to hear her explain herself, or at least admit the truth. The thing was, Emily always had a way of lying her way out of things, so I knew this wouldn't be simple. She'd probably deny everything, call me crazy, and try to turn everything around on me. But I wasn't going to let her get away with it. Not after this. I had to figure out what to do next, but honestly, I already knew my life was about to change forever. The morning after I found those messages, I couldn't even look at her the same way. My mind was racing, trying to piece together how she could have been so reckless, so utterly selfish. I stayed up all night, staring at the ceiling, trying to decide whether I should just pack my bags and leave or confront her head-on. I kept telling myself I needed answers, that I deserved the truth from her. But deep down, I already knew she'd lie her way out of it. She always did. Finally, I decided to confront her. I woke her up early, knowing she'd be annoyed, but I didn't care. I was furious, hurt, and tired of pretending everything was okay. She was still half asleep when I sat down next to her in bed. My voice was cold but controlled as I told her I knew what she'd been doing. I slipped her the phone and watched her face turn white. Her eyes flicked over the screen, and suddenly that bitchy, confident facade cracked for a second. Her lips curled into a smirk and she immediately started with the bullshit. "What the hell are you talking about, Jason? You're crazy. You're just overthinking things. I'd never cheat on you, especially not with Jake. You're just paranoid." Her tone was dismissive, like she was annoyed I'd even bring it up. She looked at me like I was some kind of fool, like I was crazy for suspecting her. But I wasn't buying it. I could see the guilt in her eyes, the way she fidgeted and avoided my gaze, and I knew she was lying. I pressed her harder, asking how long this had been going on, if she really thought she could keep it hidden forever. Her face twisted, and she shot back with some bullshit about how I was just insecure, that she loved me, and she'd never do something so stupid. She kept twisting the narrative, saying I was paranoid because I was nervous about the wedding and the baby, that I was imagining things. But I didn't believe her. I could see through her lies. She was desperate to cover her ass, to convince herself she wasn't a traitor. That moment hit me like a punch to the stomach. The reality sank in. She'd been screwing my brother during my pregnancy, and I had no idea. For how long? Were they sneaking around behind my back this whole time? Did I mean nothing to her? The betrayal cut deeper than I thought possible, and all I wanted was to lash out, to scream at her for being so reckless, so damn selfish. But instead, I just sat there, watching her lie and lie, pretending. She was innocent. The emotional toll was overwhelming. I felt a mix of fury and despair. My hands trembled and I wanted to break something or scream until I lost my voice. But I also felt this crushing sadness, like I'd lost the person I thought I knew, the person I was about to marry. How could she do this? How could she betray me, especially now that I was about to be a father? I kept asking myself if I could even forgive her, if I should even try. The trust was shattered and I knew nothing would ever be the same. After hours of arguing, she finally threw her hands up and told me I was overreacting, that I was just jealous and insecure. She said she loved me but was just having a rough patch. She called me paranoid for snooping. That's when I realized her game. She was trying to make me doubt myself, trying to turn me into the crazy one. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I knew the truth, and now I had to decide what to do with it. At that point, I was exhausted emotionally. I didn't sleep, and I felt like I'd been run over by a truck. I knew I couldn't stay with her, not after this. The betrayal was too deep, but part of me still hoped maybe she'd come clean, maybe she'd tell me she'd been stupid and would fix it. That hope was almost cruel in its naivety. I realized I didn't want her to lie anymore. I wanted the truth, and I wanted it to come from her. No more bullshit, no more hiding. I sat there staring at her, thinking about the life we planned, the future I thought I had with her. And in that moment, I knew I had to make a choice. I could pretend I didn't see this, sweep it under the rug and go ahead with the wedding. Or I could walk away, cut my losses, and try to pick up the pieces of who I was before all of this. That decision would define everything moving forward, but one thing was clear. I couldn't go back to pretending I was okay. Not after this. The days that followed were a blur. After the confrontation, I felt like I was walking around in a fog. My mind kept replaying every moment, her dismissive tone, her fake smiles, the way her eyes flicked away when I asked questions. It was like I'd been hit with a wrecking ball and all the trust I'd built up over years was crumbling. Honestly, I was angry, hurt, and filled with this gnawing sense of betrayal that refused to go away. I kept asking myself if I should just confront her again, demand the truth, or walk out and never look back. But deep down, I already knew what I had to do. I decided I needed space. I moved out of our apartment and into a friend's place for a few days. I couldn't stand to be around her, not after what I'd learned. I spent hours just sitting alone, trying to figure out how I'd let her get away with this, how I'd been so blind for so long. Every time I thought about her lying to my face, I felt rage boiling inside me. But beneath that, there was also this heavy sadness, like I'd lost someone I thought I knew, someone I loved. Now I was just left with a shell of that person, trying to make sense of everything. The thing that cut deep was the thought of Jake, my own brother. I had always trusted him, looked up to him even. And now I found out he'd been screwing my wife during my pregnancy. That image was like a punch to the stomach. I couldn't wrap my head around it. Was he just as much to blame? Did he ever care about me? Or was he just as selfish, just as broken? I kept replaying their conversations, imagining the secret meetings, the lies, the sex. It made me sick to think of them together, and yet I couldn't ignore the part of me that felt betrayed by both of them. One night, I finally broke down and called a friend, Mike. I needed someone to talk to, someone who wouldn't judge me. I told him everything, how I'd found the messages, how I'd confronted her, and how I was feeling. I expected him to tell me to walk away, to cut her out of my life. But surprisingly, he told me I had to think about what I wanted, about what kind of man I was going to be. That's when I realized I wasn't just angry at her. I was also angry at myself for letting this happen so long, for ignoring the signs, for trusting her blindly. That night I sat there staring at the ceiling and I made a decision. I couldn't stay with Emily, not after this. I couldn't be with someone who'd cheat on me with my own brother, especially when I was about to become a father. The betrayal was too deep and I knew I'd never forget it. But part of me was still confused. Should I just leave her, or was there a way to make her pay? That question haunted me. I knew I needed to teach her a lesson, to make her understand how much she'd hurt me, how much she'd broken my trust. So I started planning. Not an impulsive revenge, but something calculated. I wanted her to see what she'd lost, to feel the pain she'd caused. I began to gather evidence, not just her phone, but other things too. Texts from Jake, some photos I'd secretly taken when she wasn't looking, little messages that proved she'd been lying from the start. I wanted to make sure she understood that I knew everything. When I finally confronted her again, I had the proof. I was ready. I also realized I had to be honest with myself about what I was feeling: anger, heartbreak, disappointment. I never thought I'd feel this way, especially not about someone I loved. But now I saw her for what she really was: a liar, a cheat, a manipulator. And I knew I couldn't stay silent. I had to make her see the consequences of her actions, not just for me, but for her own sake. She needed to understand that betrayal like this doesn't go unpunished. That's when I started to make my move. I wasn't just going to walk away. I was going to make her regret ever crossing the line with my brother and me. The plan was simple but cold. I wanted her to believe I was about to forgive her, that I was giving her a second chance. But secretly, I was just waiting for the right moment to hit back harder. I wanted her to feel the pain she'd inflicted on me, to realize she'd destroyed everything we had. I knew she was bitchy and manipulative, but I also knew how to play her game now. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my dignity, my pride. I had to show her that I was not the fool she thought I was. And when the time was right, I'd make sure she paid for every lie, every betrayal, every secret she kept hidden. The day finally came when I decided I'd had enough of playing nice. I was done pretending I didn't know the truth. I needed her to confront her own lies and face what she'd done. I set up everything carefully, making sure I was in control of the situation. I contacted her, told her I wanted to meet. She was hesitant at first, of course, trying her usual manipulative tactics, but I wasn't falling for her bullshit anymore. I told her I had something important to say, and if she wanted to salvage anything, she'd better listen. She showed up at the cafe we used to go to, acting like everything was fine, like she hadn't just betrayed me with my brother. The bitchy smirk was still there, the one she always had when she thought she was in control. I kept my cool as I sat across from her and pulled out my phone, showing her the messages, the photos, the proof I'd been collecting. Her face drained of color as she realized I wasn't bluffing. Her eyes darted around, trying to come up with some excuse, some way to spin this. But I didn't give her the chance. I looked her straight in the eyes and told her I knew everything. That I knew she'd been screwing Jake during my pregnancy. That I knew she'd been lying to me, sneaking around behind my back. Her lips wavered, and for the first time I saw real panic in her eyes. She stammered, trying to deny it, claiming she was stressed, that she didn't mean to hurt me. She called herself confused, said she was just lonely. I didn't buy it, not for a second. There was no excuse for what she did. I saw her trying to manipulate her way out of it, lying through her teeth, but I just shook my head. I told her I'd had enough. That I was done with her lies, her bullshit, her bitchy attitude that she thought could get her out of anything. I told her I was tired of her pretending. She was the victim when she was the one who broke everything. First, I let her know I'd seen her true face and I wasn't going to be a fool anymore. Her reaction was classic. She got angry, started yelling at me, calling me paranoid, accusing me of ruining everything because I was insecure. She said I was overreacting and that I was just jealous of Jake. That's when I snapped. I told her she had no right to accuse me when she was the one screwing around with my brother. I told her that her lies, her secret sex with Jake, was the reason I couldn't trust her anymore, that she was trash and I was done playing her game. She looked stunned, like she'd been caught in a trap she couldn't wiggle out of. Her bitchy attitude faltered for a second and I saw the fear behind her eyes. I knew she realized she'd lost control, that she'd pushed me too far. That's when I made my move. I told her I was leaving, that I'd file for divorce, that I never wanted to see her again. I told her that she'd ruined everything, not just with me but with her own brother. I was done with her lies, her manipulations, her fake bitchy attitude that she used to cover her guilt. As I walked away from that cafe, I felt a strange mix of relief and emptiness. I had finally confronted her, finally shown her I wasn't going to be her fool anymore. The betrayal cut so deep, but I also felt a strange sense of empowerment. I'd taken back control. I'd faced the truth head-on, no matter how ugly it was. I knew there was no turning back now. The damage was done and I was ready to start healing without her. The aftermath was just as brutal as I'd imagined. She called me nonstop, crying, begging, accusing me of ruining her life. But I didn't listen. I knew I had to let her go, that I had to do what was best for myself and my unborn child. I filed for divorce, got myself some space, and began slowly putting the pieces back together. I still felt the sting of betrayal every day, but I also felt a sense of clarity. This was the end of her control over me. She'd betrayed me, lied, cheated, and sneaked around like a coward, and I was finally free of her lies. After I filed for divorce, everything changed. The house felt emptier than ever, and I was left with this gnawing ache in my chest that wouldn't go away. I kept thinking about what I'd lost, my trust, my family, my future with Emily. But at the same time, I knew I'd done the right thing. Staying with her now would have meant accepting her lies, her betrayal, and that was something I just couldn't do anymore. I had to focus on myself and my baby. The first few weeks were the hardest. I was angry, hurt, and painfully betrayed, but I also felt this strange sense of relief. No more pretending, no more pretending she cared. I was finally free from her bitchy, manipulative attitude. I started seeing a counselor to deal with everything. It helped to talk about what I'd been through, to let some of the pain out instead of bottling it all up. I realized I'd been so blinded by love and trust that I ignored all the warning signs. Now I was trying to rebuild that trust in myself, trust that I could survive this, trust that I deserved better. Meanwhile, Emily kept trying to reach me. She'd send endless texts begging for second chances, crying about how she still loved me, how she made a mistake and wanted to fix everything. But I wasn't buying it. I saw through her bullshit. She'd been lying for so long I doubted she was capable of genuine remorse. That bitchy attitude was still there. She'd call me names, accuse me of ruining her life, like I was the one who screwed everything up. But honestly, I felt nothing but disdain. She had destroyed everything we had, and now she wanted me to just forgive her. No way. I also had to deal with Jake, my brother. That was the most complicated part. We hadn't spoken since I confronted Emily with the evidence, and honestly, I didn't know if I ever would again. I felt so betrayed by him, not just because he cheated with her, but because he was supposed to be my brother. The trust was gone. I saw him in a different light now. He was just as selfish and broken as Emily. I knew I had to cut him out of my life for my own sanity. He'd always been my family, but after what he did, I couldn't pretend everything was okay. Over time, I started to focus on my upcoming fatherhood. My kid was my saving grace. I poured my energy into preparing for the birth, making sure I'd be there for my child no matter what. That gave me a new purpose. I realized I was strong enough to move past this, to start over, to be a better man, one who wouldn't tolerate betrayal or lies. I knew I'd have scars from this, but scars meant I survived and I'd come out stronger. Looking back, I learned a lot. Mainly, trust has to be earned, not given blindly. You can't ignore red flags just because you want everything to be perfect. And sometimes, love isn't enough. People can betray you in ways you never thought possible. I wish I could say I came out of this without bitterness, but honestly, I still feel it. Betrayal leaves wounds that take time to heal. But I also know that I'm better off without her, and I've learned to value myself more. Now, I'm focusing on what really matters: my child, my peace, and building a life where I don't have to look over my shoulder or question every smile. I don't regret exposing her, even if it hurt like hell at the time, because in the end, the truth had to come out, and I'm finally free from the lies. I'll never forget what happened, but I'll use it as a lesson. Trust no one blindly and never ignore the signs. Because sometimes the biggest betrayals come from the people you least expect, and that's when it hurts the most. It's been a few months now since everything fell apart. I won't say I'm fully healed. Some wounds run too deep for that, but I've definitely come a long way. I've learned to accept that betrayal is part of life sometimes, and that the only thing I can really do is move forward stronger and smarter. The hardest part was coming to terms with how deeply I'd been blindsided, how I'd trusted Emily and Jake blindly, and how I'd let myself ignore the warning signs. But I refused to be a victim forever. That realization gave me some semblance of peace. I focus on my son now. I named him Liam, and he's the best thing that ever happened to me. Every time I hold him, I remind myself why I had to walk away from Emily. She's out of my life, and honestly, I don't miss her, not one bit. The fact that I managed to protect my kid from her toxic bullshit makes it all worth it. I've become more cautious, more guarded, but also more aware of what I deserve. No one's going to betray me like that again, not without paying a heavy price. Looking back, I realize I've got some valuable lessons. 1. Never ignore the red flags, because they'll bite you in the ass when you least expect it. 2. Trust has to be earned, not given. And 3. You can't force someone to be honest if they're determined to hide things. The truth always finds a way out, sooner or later. I learned to listen to my gut, even when it was uncomfortable, because those feelings, that instinct, is what saved me from an even bigger disaster. And yeah, I'll admit it's been a bitter pill to swallow. I feel anger sometimes, especially when I think about how Emily played me for a fool. But it's not as intense as it used to be. Now, it's more of a distant ache, something I acknowledge but don't dwell on. I've learned to forgive myself for trusting blindly, and I've forgiven her for her betrayal, not because she deserved it, but because I refuse to carry that bitterness forever. I want to be better, for Liam's sake and for myself. I want to share this story to anyone out there who might be going through something similar, someone who feels betrayed, lost, or just broken. Trust is fragile and it can shatter in a second, but you're stronger than you think. Sometimes the only way to heal is to face the pain head-on, confront the lies, and walk away from what no longer serves you. It's messy, it's painful, and it's unfair. But it's also necessary. Because at the end of the day, you owe it to yourself to live honestly, with integrity, and without the weight of betrayal dragging you down. So here I am, standing tall with a new outlook on life. I've learned that revenge isn't about hurting others. It's about reclaiming your dignity and proving to yourself that you're better than the people who tried to tear you down. Emily's gone, Jake's gone, and I've finally found my peace. The scars will stay, but they remind me of what I survived and how far I've come. I'll never forget, but I will move forward. And for the first time in a long time, I believe I'm genuinely okay.